Welcome to the FMCG Guys, the podcast that dives into the innovation, strategy, and trends shaping consumer goods and retail in Europe and beyond.
Welcome to a new episode of the FMCG Guys. I'm your host, Daniel Torres. If this is the first time that you join us, we speak with the top voices of the fast-moving consumer goods and retail industries. You'll find us on your favorite podcast platform, which you're probably on already, as well as on our LinkedIn page, which if you're not following us there, we recommend you do to stay up to date with the last episodes and also industry news, and you'll join a community of 13,000 and growing. And in this adventure, I've been lucky to be accompanied by not one, but two FMCG luminaries. And one of them is my co-host today, Christina Nicolaou. Hi, Christina, how are you?
Hi, Daniel. I'm doing very well in sunny Athens, 25 degrees, and can't wait for summer.
And I know you like more and more these introductions that I'm doing, so... They're getting better. So on the other side of the virtual table, let's call it, is someone that comes from the retail industry. I would say, she wouldn't say it, but I would say she's one of the rising stars in retail and apparel. She has a background in retail blue chips like Arcadia and Levi's, and she's now the head of e-commerce at Urban Outfitters. Hello, Maddy Booker-Price. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm doing very well, thank you. Happy to be here.
And nice to have you, and glad that we learned before the call that you're actually Australian, which I didn't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't try and keep it a secret, but my accent definitely doesn't give it away.
Yeah, no, definitely. So tell us about that, actually, since we talked about it. How did you end up in the UK being Australian?
This is a good story. I could probably do a whole podcast about my mom and dad and their interesting journey from Australia to Scotland. But yeah, that's what it was. It was a decision that my parents made when I was about 10. My mom has family in England, so we decided to move to Glasgow, which is, of course, known for its beautiful weather and, well, lots of hill walking and lovely things on the doorstep. So I think that was also a bit of a factor. So yeah, I spent my teenage years growing up in Glasgow. And they still live there at the moment.
And you studied as well in the UK and so on. So
yes, I did. I studied in Edinburgh.
Nice. So the city next door. So tell us a bit about your current role at Urban Outfitters. What do you do there?
Yeah, so I'm about 5 or 6 months in, so relatively new to the company. I mean, I suppose most people will have heard of Urban Outfitters. You definitely will if you're between the ages of 16 and 25, and you might have shopped there back in the past. But yeah, it's a cross-category, cross-divisional, youth-led mini marketplace. So predominantly owned by product, but also a curated assortment from many other brands. And I have quite a commercial head of e-com role. It's quite product, trend, and trade driven. We're selling in about 70 countries, but it's mainly the UK and Europe as our core business. And yeah, I look after, I guess, the bread and butter is trade. So that's our money, our product, and our customer, but also site production, content, operations, and testing, and a little bit of segmentation and optimization. We do have a North American headquarters based in Philadelphia, so we share the tech stack with them for the most part and kind of collaborate with them on roadmap and tech initiatives, but there are some local testing and plugin initiatives as well.
And you're very much in e-commerce. And I know that we're discussing at the beginning that we're a bunch of millennials actually here, which means that we have seen technology progressing throughout our lives. I'm very keen to learn how has the digital landscape and the technology changed as you went through your career in e-commerce.
Yeah, good question. And actually, I haven't felt more of a millennial ever in my life until I joined this Gen Z brand. I downloaded TikTok pretty early into my stint there because I definitely felt a little bit out of touch of the social trends. Definitely keeps you on your toes.
It's funny when started us that were born in the early 90s, when we start seeing that we're definitely not young anymore. At least for me, it's been like quite a transformation, right?
I mean, speak for yourself. I'm still going to hold on to being young, but no, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. And it has been a transformation. I mean, I started in core, I guess you could call it, merchandise planning when I worked at the Arcadia group, and kind of learned a bit about I suppose the product, supply chain, and all the traditional B&M stuff. And then one day in the staff kitchen, someone who worked in the digital team, which at that point in time was kind of a bit other, and we didn't really understand who they were, what they were doing. I guess she asked me if I'd be interested in joining the dark side, which we still kind of joke about today. And I've never looked back. But yeah, I mean, at that point in time, it was a big learning curve for me. It was interesting because we had a white label solution and we shared a floor with the development team. So I guess the gift of proximity and a bit of bribery meant that we were able to learn a lot about how websites are run and what is a web shop. And I guess at that time, it was very much a case of we want to build X, so let's write a bit of code or stick this on. And it was quite plastery, I would say, as an experience. I suppose that's why websites were seen as a bit glitchy, because they were. And the concept of headless, at least for me, was very mythical and utopian, and things took a long time. So I guess we were lucky back then that programs like CRM and retention and acquisition were just in their infancy, and we could totally depend on acceleration and growth from some of the more commercial levers, whereas the technical area was a little bit less developed. And I think that's probably one of the main call outs, I would say, from back in the day. And I mean, I'm skipping out a big period in the middle, but I think that's where I've seen most of the change coming.
In what area specifically?
So it probably around the speed to market of digital, let's say, like capabilities or acceleration. For example, if we think about now how we can't test on an app, it's really hard to test on an app, right? Like you can't do an A/B test with a really easy tag that goes live the next day. That's kind of where we were 10 years ago when it came to site and mobile testing. And did we have a mobile first website or a responsive website? Like probably not. We probably had to get more development to do that. So all of the ideas and the conversion driving initiatives that we had for the front end were really slow, really cumbersome. And as I say, you had to kind of depend on trade and loyalty and things like that. Whereas there was definitely a big acceleration of testing and headless architecture and optimization and segmentation that really allowed the commercial teams who are running e-commerce, I would say, to have a bit more flexibility and freedom to really hone in on that experience. And that's been really exciting to see as it goes around, as I see with my colleagues around me, being able to have a bit more ownership and power of the digital experience that you're serving your customers.
Mm-hmm. And now that you're head of e-commerce, how have you seen this role change from like 10 years ago or 8 years ago to today in a retail omni-channel company?
Yeah, I guess like the main feedback I would say there is that the companies I've worked for have seen a bigger share of their business come through digital. And I don't think that's unique to me. I work in fashion. We're 40% of the total business, seeing our sales come through digital channel. I've also worked for businesses where it's been 15% or 30%, but I don't think this is a unique retail stat. I think a lot of companies are seeing that sort of share where there's a big focus to DTC. So what that means as a digital lead, I suppose, is that you can't just work on your channel and your department. I mentioned a few things about development. I mentioned a few commercial initiatives. Sure, like we could turn on our own affiliate programs, we could send our own emails, and we could do our own promotions. But as that kind of share of business and that omni view becomes so much more important, if you think it would be a great idea for your customers to enjoy a loyalty program online and in store, you need to work with the rest of the business to make that happen. So I think making change starts to operate on a slightly bigger scale. And I guess COVID helped us accelerate that somewhat. And you've probably seen it all around you. Loyalty programs are getting so much better, and you can, redeem your points online and in store. And maybe there's some products exclusives that are attached to that, or maybe there's some experiences that are attached to that. I mean, obviously those things require the rest of the business and the rest of the teams to kind of help you build a valuable proposition. And you're probably just amplifying that on the digital channels. But I think that's how this role has changed in terms of like an omni and a share of business lens. And I'd also say there's always been a piece of digital advocacy or helping the business elevate their digital literacy. That's always been a little bit of a objective within me and my teams, and that hasn't gone away. And everyone else has caught up a little bit more. However, I think that almost becomes more important. So if everyone has a really strong opinion on how does the homepage look and how does the email look, it's making sure that we're doing our job as digital experts, so to speak, to help those leaders in other divisions make informed decisions. Actually, PDP is getting over 50% of our traffic. I know that there's 9,000 of them, but if we make these ones really good, and if we're really proud about these, and we've got half the people.
What's PDP?
Product detail or display page, like the product page on the website.
We've got like the photo and the description next to it.
Exactly. Look at me, I'm doing a bad job of being a digital evangelist right now. But it is that conversation exactly, is trying to, I always use the terminology of like digital real estate, like explaining your web shop like a store. And that role, I think, becomes more important as the rest of the business feed in even more into that channel.
And I guess, like, if you want to influence all these people around you, the different functions, which I love that you mentioned it, to help you, let's say, elevate the experience for the consumers and offer them whatever feels more relatable at that point in time, you have to be up to date all the time with all the new things that are coming up. So I'm wondering, how do you personally handle this? How do you see what's going on and what's new and what's trendy?
Yeah. Good question. I think that you have to really enjoy this part of your role if you want to be successful with it. And I have to say, I do. I really do. I mean, some of them are really easy. Like you can go to conferences, you can go to a mobile app breakfast, and it can be really difficult to make time to do that. Everyone knows the challenge of that, and I'm guilty of it myself. But I think if you set yourself some goals, and again, lead by example, make sure your team are following suit. Once a quarter, just get out to market. I mean, think about the retail directors, they're out in store every week. And sure, we can go and have a look on everyone else's website, but maybe we don't know exactly what's powering behind that. And I think sometimes the topics aren't new. I think we've been talking about generative AI for so many years, and you're like, oh, okay, here we go, same topic on the agenda. But I would say that you always come out of it with a new perspective, a new idea, or it will remind you of something that you kind of forgotten to pick up, or you'll come away with a bit of energy. I think that's for sure. And often at these things, the beauty of them is meeting other people in similar jobs to you, where you can complain about the same things or take inspiration or just get a bit of energy. I met someone last week or last month, and yes, similar role for another fashion brand. And now we're talking about maybe doing like a cross mentorship program with, some people in my team, someone in her team. I was picking her brain the other day about a stat that I just didn't really know, to be honest. And, these kind of things build into a bit of a community, which I think is really powerful. I also have this little peer group, I suppose you could call it. I hate the word peer, but I guess that's exactly what it is. It's people I've worked with in the past in different roles. It's maybe about 7 or 8 of us. And we used to hop on the phone maybe once a month during COVID when we didn't have that much else to do. But now it's maybe every 2-3 months, and sometimes we'll have a topic, and sometimes it will be, I've got this problem, and sometimes it will be a quick message on the WhatsApp group. Have you ever used this before? How much do you pay for this? Do you have anyone for this job? How's trade? Like these sorts of elements I think are really, really valuable. And I would say in digital more than anything else, when we're building business cases for new initiatives, having that external point of view is actually really critical. So yeah, I mean, I've finished all of that and I say it's quite easy, but actually you do need to be a bit disciplined, I suppose, and make time for it too.
Yeah, and I was actually speaking to a VP of e-commerce of a big FMCG company that actually came from a general management route, and he was saying like one of the really cool things of being in digital that you really have contact with all these external companies that are doing very cool stuff. Which if you are in a different function, your own company is so big that you don't normally have contact with them. So I think that
no, definitely that's a nice element to the industry for sure.
And the thing of the peer group, I think it's a great idea, by the way. Speaking about,
are you looking for an invite now?
oh yeah, I don't know if you'd want me there. I disrupt the order, the piece of the group. You don't want me there, Maddy. But speaking about peers, so obviously you're an e-commerce director, but you also have these other parts of the business, like your very obvious one is retail, your peer in retail, but then also your peer in marketing, for example, or in finance and supply chain. From the e-commerce perspective, how do you normally partner with your peers? Because there's multiple touch points with them. I mean, I think that the most logical ones would be retail and marketing, no, from a functional point of view, but
that's definitely part of it. And yeah, I'll touch on retail a little bit because I think the role of Omni is really important and exciting. Again, I don't think this is a new phrase, like Omni is the future. I think we've been hearing that for a long time. But I have seen this at being 15% of the business. And I guess I'm quantifying that with things like Omni initiatives, buy online, pick up in store, or vice versa. Yes, the partnership there I think is really important. I would say that I've seen time and time again that kind of conflict between my P&L and your P&L and where does the sale go? And this has kind of been a plaster or an add-on initiative and it's good for the consumer, but we haven't maybe thought it through internally with all the functions. So I think, yeah, a shared vision and sometimes a shared financial incentive or, an understanding of that flow of extra revenue coming from the customer ultimately is really important. I also think, we make a big effort to share with everyone, this is what's going on in digital, and this is what I'm talking about when I say PDP or whatever, but it also goes the other way. So, making sure that you spend a bit of time to go into the store and actually understand why maybe the rate of some of the stores is quite low when they're sending out e-commerce orders, because actually that room is really difficult and I don't know, maybe the fragmented stock is more of an issue than we realize it would be behind the screen. It can be very easy to sit in head office and, look at money and look at something that someone else can do. But I think it's important to flip that around. And I suppose the same goes for the DC and like the warehouses that support your everyday operations. But actually, I would say in the business I'm working in now, which is a very product and trend-led business, I mean, a good assortment makes or breaks the season. That actually planning and merchandising, or planning and buying rather, are almost our core partners there. And it's been really exciting experience for me working with them in a slightly different way. So while they will always do their kind of option strategy and their big cash drivers and their like long tail cleanup of their products, partnering with them more to say, we're going to do the same thing of our digital real estate. And these are our top 5 pages. This is where we get 80% of our traffic. And on these pages, we've got dead stock because no one looks at them or no one scrolls past a certain page. So yeah, I guess it's like taking that digital journey and the data that we have and the gaps that we have of the digital journey and kind of partnering with the teams who are ultimately creating the product that sells and kind of hashing through some of that raw data or some of those raw challenges together and like creating a bit of a shared vision. I think that's again a really key unlock, because it can be really easy to say, yay, give us the product, or make better product, or give us more products. And then it can be easy on the other hand to say, sell more of it, make the website better. But I think like sitting down in a room and even just taking an example of, this is the women's tops category. These are the filters that people click on. Like this is where they stop. So these are the products that people are going to see, and kind of sharing that understanding of the product is really important.
I guess it's like mirroring what we expect or what we read on the outside, right? So we know that there is one consumer that has a single experience with our brand, regardless of the interface they interact with. And then when you've got a very fragmented kind of backend, thinking about the whole company and the way that if you work in silos and if you don't have this shared vision, as you say, then how do you expect to express a different image towards your shopper, right?
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, you've mentioned so many things already, Maddy, like how do you prioritize? What is going to be the things where you feel like you're making the most impact and you feel like this is now number one on my list, and then go from there?
Yeah, good question. I guess probably starting to ask your consumer what's the priority, so they will tell you, I suppose, in the numbers, and they will maybe also tell you in real life. So I think it's important to keep that door open when it comes to feedback, whether that is a session where everyone comes to head office and you do a focus group, or that is a feedback form on the website, and ultimately what your conversion funnel is telling you. I think that tells you where the priorities are. And you probably have a blend of commercial impact that some of these changes are going to make, and then you might have some that are really important for the brand, or they're foundational for the success of the growth. But I think starting with the customer is important, and then that next step is almost building an operating model around the parts of your roadmap or your plans that are actually going to add value. So for example, I mentioned there like the top customer journeys. It's almost like building a mini internal business case for, okay, I've got this many people in my team, I've got this software, like if we were to just start from scratch, what's actually going to make the most money? So if I optimize this page and the conversion increases from this to this, how much does that spit out? And how much cash have I got behind that in terms of products? It was a little bit granular and can sometimes be a bit forceful in terms of getting a metric for every single thing you do, and it's not always like that. But I think especially when it comes to digital capabilities and site optimization, yeah, that's a good place to start.
And the website per se, so the web shop, which is obviously as simple as it sounds, it's where you run your P&L. How do you talked before about seeing it as a real estate asset? Tell us a bit about your vision of what a retailer's website should look like.
Yeah, I guess it really depends on the company vision and the brand and where it is in its, digital maturity as well. I think where I am right now at Urban Outfitters, it's absolutely a shopping channel. We're almost at halfway point of the sales coming through that channel. So that's a flagship store by any means. But I also think there's other roles that digital channels can take. If we think about an app, and like Charlotte Tilbury has a great example of this. It is a community channel. I'm sure they're trading well through that as well, but the personalization, the expert skin advice, the events that you can attend and be part of, the community advice that you can share and get back, that for me is a bit more than a flagship or a shopping channel. It's a community building channel, and that also has a brand element. So I think there's a few different ways to look at it, and it kind of depends on where your brand is in the journey. But I think there's always a bit of a balance of a commercial channel and also a kind of brand building, visual impact as well. I mean, if you think about how much traffic you get a week, say it's a couple million, most of those people aren't going into a store that week. They're opening their phone and they're having a scroll on the app. So that is the brand touch point for many people rather than seeing an advert. So I think there's a bit of duality there.
Okay, I remember reading somewhere about the original Twitter kind of like vision, which was it being the digital equivalent of the town square, where people just cross by and they can chat. So I really like how you're drawing these parallels, with real estate. And it's not necessarily just a building. It has different functions, can be for a community.
Yeah, for sure.
What about the difference between the website from a computer and the app? I mean, I don't know if you can share what percentage of people come from each channel, but in any case, be interested to know like how you envision one or the other.
Yeah, again, I think it's quite similar to that community or journey piece that I mentioned before. And also depending on what your product is, the app in theory should be the most native, the most dynamic, and the most personalized experience. So if you're buying a couch and you can put it up in your room and see it sitting over there in the corner in whatever color, that's a different experience to what you expect on the mobile site. And similarly, I guess in fashion, with a lot of these marketplaces or mini marketplaces or retailers that have thousands of options, you're also looking for a bit of styling advice and a bit of curation. So the app also allows for an elevated service, so to speak, from the mobile site. App is definitely a growing and a more frequently visited and a higher converting and a higher basket value channel everywhere that I have looked and seen. That's definitely what I'm hearing, what I'm seeing in this industry. But like I say, I think the value proposition needs to be really clearly defined, because then it's just a case of stealing traffic from mobile. I think there needs to be an elevated experience. Why are you, there's only so many apps on your phone that you're looking at or you have space for. I think there's a stat of around 24 or something like that. I'm probably making it up now, but I mean, it sounds about right. And if you're going to have that, what's the added experience? Why are you going to turn on your notification? But yeah, definitely an investment area from my point of view.
The basket is higher on the app than on the website.
Generally speaking, that's what I'm seeing. Yeah.
So, Maddy, you understand we're very keen on digital and we get very excited about it. That's why we're asking you all the technical part of the questions. But I know that our listeners love to hear more about it. But now on the other side, so we're discussing all these amazing things that you're doing and all these people that you're influencing. So tell us a little bit about your leadership style and how it has evolved.
Yeah, good question. It always makes you take a second to reflect, doesn't it? I think firstly, like, feedback is a gift. One of my old bosses always used to say this to me when I used to hate getting feedback, but I've learned to love it. And I think that it helps you stay a bit self-aware to your style. So I like to think that this is a view I have that's shared with my team. But I'd say is kind of a tale of two parts. So on the vision side, I normally have a pretty strong vision. Like, this is what I want to do, and I'm really excited about it. And I hope people join me, and they can probably feel that excitement. This is the vision. So I'm quite directional when it comes to that. But the approach or the execution, and sometimes even the timing of that, definitely a bit more hands-off and open. I love working with a team. It's always one of my non-negotiables when I'm looking at different opportunities. It's something I really enjoy, and I like to empower them to own the mistake, but also to own the success of what they're running. And I guess when you build that trust and that genuine connection, it makes it really easy to give feedback, and it makes it, from what I've seen, easier for those individuals to get excited and also have the same kind of drive that I hope that they share with me. But I would also say, as I've learned and developed a bit in the last few years, I've probably been quite quick to call out behaviors that don't sit right with me. That's not necessarily like a management thing. That's just how I work with other people. If I see something that, no, that doesn't feel right, that hit a bad chord with me, assume the best intent, but call it out. That's kind of how I roll. But yeah, generally speaking, I'm quite a casual person at work. I love to have fun with my team, and we do have a laugh. We have a laugh every day, which is so important. But I'm so intense because I'm so driven. Like, I'm so excited about the things that we can do. And sometimes I know that can come across when accidentally asking for about 8 things. So I have to be conscious about that as well. So yeah, I guess it's a bit of a balance of the two.
Yeah, and I think that one thing that I think is super important is the part of, like, being transparent and like calling out behaviors that don't fit with you or looking at it from another way, like fit the company culture or the culture. And obviously this is like one of these things that, like, super complicated to build. And it's like the most precious thing, right? Once you have a culture that works and a set of behaviors that's commonly accepted, to really like treat that as a top priority. It's complicated. It's not the most sexy part, but it's like super important, right? Because things can break very quickly.
Yeah, I agree.
And so we've talked a bit about your career, and obviously I'm sure there's been some learnings for you in the way. If you had to choose one piece of advice with everything that you've learned to give yourself at the beginning of your career, what would that be?
One piece of advice. Oof. I guess don't let the knockbacks kind of bring you down. Sounds like I'm quoting a pop song, but I did this panel recently. It was a women in e-commerce panel. And I think that's like the one thing I wanted to say is there will be times where someone will get the promotion over you and they didn't deserve it. And there will be some times where someone speaks over you in a meeting, or there will be some times where you take the fall for something that isn't your fault, whatever. Like, these things happen. Don't let them hold you back, or just don't let them deviate too much from your vision. Like, just keep going.
This was Maddy Booker-Price, head of e-commerce at Urban Outfitters. Christina, what are your key takeaways from this conversation?
I think every time we get someone who comes from kind of the digital sphere of FMCG, I always get very surprised and inspired with how they got into digital. So Maddy said as well, like, she was working next to developers and she kind of like got a little bit of a better understanding of what digital is, and then little by little she moved into it. So I really like to see this kind of journey.
Yeah, I think it's a good reminder of how important it is to be curious and think about like your job, think outside your job description when you're in business. Even if you're told to do your job, which you obviously have to do, it's important to like get involved into other aspects of the business if you have an ambition to grow.
Of course, and delivering your job, you're never supposed to just be delivering your job within your function, right? You need to be working across different functions. And that's also something that Maddy brought up quite a lot, right? So you need to be in touch with the more business side of things, as well as the more development. So this whole tech and commercial coming together in order to create something that at the end brings value to the consumer. So having this holistic view is one of the most important things that you can do regardless of the function you belong to.
Yeah, no, and it's kind of a common thread of people who end up going into general management, I think.
Yeah, and I also loved a lot how she brought up the way that she keeps herself updated or upskilling with the latest trends, the latest news. And it was all about people at the end of the day. As I said, like, you need to make up time to go to conferences and to find new people to network with and learn from each other.
Yeah, which, by the way, if anyone wants to network with us, we do go to events regularly. The next one will be going to a shop talk here in my hometown of Barcelona in June 3rd to 5th, I believe. So do get in touch if you're there. What else? She also talked about, for example, the role of the omni-channel director really changing as this channel, like the online channel, has got a bigger share in the sales of the companies, no?
Yes, omni-channel is the future, but I feel it's like so much of a buzzword as well. I guess it's again the question of, do I integrate digital in the wider spectrum of sales channels and my sales strategy, or do I keep it separate as something that's kind of like even alien a little bit because not everybody is still very connected to it? So let's let the experts handle it.
Yeah, and then she talked about like that you, as an e-com director, more than omni-channel, like you have to have a broader vision. Again, being curious about the business, and also have an element of digital advocacy of like, how can digital benefit the other sides of the business? And also, how can the other sides of the business benefit digital?
As you said, it's a third vision. You mentioned also like having a third incentive, right? So we're all working together to bring something to our consumers and do it in the best possible way, and the consumers expect us to, and to provide the best possible experience. And that is not, it's never anymore going to include a very single channel kind of like view and execution. It has to be a little bit of everything, and that's where omni-channel approach comes into play. But as I said, what you need to really prioritize for anything you're executing is asking the consumers and getting their feedback. So as long as an organization, you're connected to your consumer, they will guide you.
Yeah. One other thing that I like how she challenged my preconceptions about, I said, yeah, probably the departments you work the most with are retail and marketing. She said, well, no, actually it's merchandising and retail. So I thought that was really interesting. And I always like to learn new things, and especially if it goes against some belief that I had.
Yes, together with planning, as I said, and the buyers, right? Because that's very important on her side of the job, how you're procuring all those products and how you ensure you get the right amount of supply at the time that is needed and they get through the right channels of distribution, depending on whether they're going to be selling more online, offline, what's the seasonality and what are the newest trends. So I guess it's really in the fast part of the FMCG.
Yeah, no, and I think also like finally there were some interesting parts of leadership advice she gave, like around feedback, setting a vision, but also working as a team, getting people involved. And I think that's more like a modern leadership style, no? Like, okay, you're the manager, but you have to elevate people and feel more like a team than not like an army regiment.
I guess a lot of people talk about the humble leadership style a lot of times nowadays, but for me, I think she used the phrase "feedback is a gift," which was very much of a buzz phrase in Procter and Gamble. Like I was wondering, did someone from Procter tell this to her? Because we used to say it all the time. Indeed, feedback is a gift. Unless you have the information, you cannot act on it. So keep on asking people, and I love that she mentioned how you want to be stirring in the success as well as stirring in the mistakes and ensuring that everybody's feeling this part of the team, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Christina, for your wise analysis of the conversation. As always, good to see you. Good to have you listeners join us again. It's really cool that every episode we have like around 500 downloads average. So this is fantastic. Keep on supporting us. If we don't do the job up to our standards, feedback is a gift. So do give us your feedback. You can contact us directly on LinkedIn through our call it company page, the FMCG Guys page. We have an inbox there, or you can contact us directly. If you want to come to the show, or you have somebody that you would like to see on the show, you can also tell us about that. And if you like the show, please leave us a review on your favorite podcast player, which according to our statistics is most likely Apple Podcast or Spotify. And with that said, have a good day, and we'll see you in the next episode of the FMCG Guys.